He was attacked, investigated, prosecuted, imprisoned. Why? Because he was attached to the Trump campaign the first time and part of the transition team. I'm talking about George Papadopoulos. He tells his harrowing tale. You're not going to believe what they charged him with, what they said he did, and how relieved he was when he was pardoned. This is his story on Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags. Make sure you follow this playlist. Get ready for George Papadopoulos. You think the agents that were there were in on it, or do you think they were just taking orders?
No, I think 100% they were in on it.
Really?
This was never some sort of spontaneous investigation. I think that this was all predetermined. And also, once they launched it, it wasn't about investigating dirt on Trump and others. It was about planting dirt. I've never met a Russian official in my life. I've never traveled to Russia. I have no interest in meeting with Russian officials. Right. So just so you could understand what I'm saying here, they tried to pin me as a center guy in a Russia conspiracy, even though I've never traveled to Russia. I've never met a government official from Russia.
This is Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags.
You know his name because he got caught up in this Russia garbage. You know his name because he's been exonerated now, but he was pardoned by President Trump. It's George Papadopoulos. He's an author. He is a guy who is a presidential advisor at one point. He's also a guy who knows a lot about politics, not only here, but where he's sitting in Europe right now as well. George, how are you? Good to see you.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Joe. Thanks for having me.
There's so much going on, man. I mean, when DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, who I know well, I think you know him, you know her as well. When she comes out and says, "I'm in the ODNI, I'm in the office," I now see literal paperwork that says, in December 7th of 2016, no Russia collusion, no involvement. Russia did nothing. They might have tried, but they didn't get it done. 2 days later, President Obama calls a meeting of all the players that you know. James Clapper, you got Brennan's there, Loretta Lynch is there, Susan Rice is there, Biden's there, Obama's there, all these people, and he said, let's leak to this is according to DNI Tulsi Gabbard, let's leak to the media, the Washington Post, that there was collusion, they tried to work with Trump, and they tried to do something in the election. That 2-day period took you from a guy who knew a lot and who did great and you were way above board to a guy that was then under suspicion. So long question short, do you feel vindicated because of what Tulsi Gabbard is saying today?
Yeah, Joe, I think that DNI Gabbard is going to go down in history as the most consequential DNI in modern American history, along with many other people that President Trump has appointed for this very important moment in American history. I think, first of all, at a personal level, I feel total and absolute vindication. I know certainly President Trump and others do as well. But most importantly, I think the 75 to 80 million MAGA voters who voted for President Trump and his agenda 3 different times feel vindicated because they always knew deep down in their soul that there was something wrong with the 2016 election and the 2020 election. But now we have unequivocal evidence directly from the top of the U.S. government supporting those theories. And Joe, I'll just say one thing. I think moving forward, what we're really going to see here is that this was never some sort of spontaneous investigation. I think that this was all predetermined. And also, once they launched it, it wasn't about investigating dirt on Trump and others. It was about planting dirt. So if there's 2 things that I hope I made clear in my intro for the audience, is that that's really what I think the Obama administration was up to. And that's what DNI Gabbard recently declassified.
He's got a book called Deep State Target. Go and get that. It's been out for a while. It's George Papadopoulos. What was your role in the Trump campaign? Was it advisor to the president? Because once he was actually elected, I thought I saw you in some pictures with him as well. What was your role in that either the lead up to or part of the administration?
Yeah, so I was one of the initial foreign policy advisors that was rolled out around the time when candidate Trump clinched the nomination. And then I worked through the transition with people like General Flynn and Steve Bannon, who obviously were then later elevated to very senior level roles. And just a couple of days after I left the inauguration, Joe, where I'm there meeting with people like Anthony Scaramucci and Reince Priebus.
Yes.
Back then when Scaramucci and Trump were obviously a lot warmer than they are now.
Right.
A week or so later, I have a knock at my door at 7 a.m. with FBI agents looking to ask me some bizarre questions. So things moved very quickly, and I really was at a peak in life and reached the bottom very quickly after that.
That was before Mooch went nuts. I had him on my show back then, Anthony Scaramucci, and he loved Trump. Every word out of his mouth, love Trump. I love Trump. I love him. I love Trump. I actually posted a video later when he went crazy. Anthony, is this you? So you were part of that group of people that was surrounding Trump. We're not really sure how many of them were pro-Trump and how many of them were trying to derail Trump. You certainly were pro-Trump. I was. I know Simona was, and still are. So saying all of that, when they knocked on your door, those, knowing that we know what we know now from Tulsi Gabbard, those agents either knew or were lied to about why they were at your door. So they get there, knock on the door, and do what? They present a warrant? They arrest you? What happens that day?
No, Joe, and that's where it gets really, really egregious when it comes to the misconduct. They knew the entire thing was a setup. And what we know based on evidence has been declassified recently, they knew it going back months before they ever came to my house trying to catch me in what we later familiarized ourselves with the term a perjury trap. It's the same type of thing that they got General Flynn on. It's what they attempted to do to President Trump when Mueller was appointed. They got others on it. They had Roger Stone apparently lying under oath, all this kind of nonsense. So what they do is they know they've trying to set you up, but they couldn't get you. So they try to catch you in a lie. And then so what they did is they come to my house at 7 a.m. We need to ask you some questions about national security. I'm just waking up. And I say, look, I have nothing to hide. I've always helped, the U.S. government if they've ever, asked me something. I'm a patriot. I love my country. So why would I not go and answer questions? Little did I find out that it wasn't really an interview to investigate or to find out what I knew. It was some way to get me in an entrapped situation to say something that they could later say, Papadopoulos lied. He's trying to withhold critical information about this investigation that they had launched fraudulently months before. So that's pretty much what it was. And they did it to not only myself, but to others too. So it was a very crazy pattern that they followed.
It was you, General Flynn, Jerome Corsi. They tried to get him to lie under oath too, or lie while being interviewed. Stone, as you said. So there they are, and I want to make sure I understand what you just said to me. You think the agents that were there were in on it, or do you think they were just taking orders?
No, I think 100% they were in on it.
Really?
Because
tell me why.
When they interviewed me, Joe, they were trying to ask me these very open-ended questions, trying to hook me. And when I started giving them information that even they were shocked I was willing to share with them, because they thought I would try and cover it up, I could see that they weren't shocked with anything. It's as if they knew everything, that they had come to that table. There were two agents. They basically showed me a file this high on the table, with a picture of my brother on the first page, a picture of my house on the second, basically showing me that they have been following me for potentially months, years. They know everything about my family. They know everything about my background. And they were there just really to try to do their best to make me say something about Trump that would have cut Trump's administration short by at least, he wouldn't probably be a president for 7 or 8 months if they were able to force me to say the nonsense that they wanted me to say, what they wanted others to say. So that's really what it was, Joe. And I hope that these agents are not only fired, but also put under some sort of investigation.
Deep State Target is the name of the book. It's George Papadopoulos. Go follow him. It's not George Papadopoulos on X. You've got a huge, it's like George Pop 19 or something. Tell me what the X name is.
Yeah, Joe, thank you. X account is at George Papa 19.
At George Papa 19. Go and follow him right now. Also, he's the co-host of Global View. A Global View show is over on YouTube. Go follow that and go check it out. It's he and his wife Simona that you've all seen a lot of times here on my show. It's a great show. I've been on a couple of times. I think those were lower rated, but everybody else that you're getting is actually pretty good. Let's get into exactly what they wanted you to say, George. So they're in the house. You're open. You're an open book. You're answering whatever questions they have. What do you think they wanted you to say? If you, George Papadopoulos, said this sentence, you would have been scot-free and off the hook. What did they want you to say?
Yeah, so basically they basically asked me, among a million different things, the most important thing that they tried doing and what they continue to try to do up through Mueller, up through my arrest at an airport, up through all the attempts to muscle me and to try to make me crack. I had this guy that, Simona has mentioned him numerous times on your show, Joseph Mifsud. He's at the epicenter of the entire scandal. He was at the epicenter of Comey's investigation, IG Horowitz, Mueller, Durham, and now people in the modern times have been calling to find out really who was handling him and why he was meeting with me. So what these guys wanted to know is what was Mifsud talking to me about and what did he want me to do with the information? So they already knew about him. They were basically hooking me saying, can you tell us about this guy without me ever, bringing him up? And it would have been impossible for them to know who this person was.
Right.
Unless I brought it up. So they said, so Mifsud was the guy that told me, oh, the Russians, they have Hillary's emails, all this, that's fake situation that they tried to entrap me with.
Right.
And they said, who did you tell on the campaign? Did you tell President Trump this information? And I said, no. And what they wanted to do, Joe, the entire case that they had tried to build around me was to find out if I repeated that to Trump or to Flynn or to anyone else, because what they were trying to do was put a conspiracy together that would have entangled the whole campaign and overthrown Trump's administration. And that's what this whole situation now with Comey and Brennan is, that they're simultaneously under a criminal investigation for a conspiracy. And what do you need for a conspiracy, Joe? You need 2 or more people involved in a criminal act. So that's what they were trying to get me to say, and it failed. And they ended up upping the heat against me, and I still wouldn't crack.
Yeah, and I'm glad you've got a strong backbone. It's George Papadopoulos. This is very similar to what they did to Donald Trump Jr. And see if you agree to this. They send some woman to meet with Donald Trump Jr. while Trump, the senior, is running for president. And he's told, he says, it was about some sort of adoption or orphanages or something like that. And she gets there and allegedly was offering up some sort of opposition research about Hillary Clinton, and he didn't fall for it. In fact, Jared Kushner walked out and said, we have to get out of this meeting. George, is that person similar to Mifsud in that somebody set them up to target you, to target Trump Jr., to try to get you to say something they can then use against you later and maybe claim that you lied about it? I know that, look, it's all very confusing, but do you think, is that what was going on?
That's exactly what was going on, but it's even more disturbing in my situation, Joe, because I've never met a Russian official in my life. I've never traveled to Russia. I have no interest in meeting with Russian officials. Right. So just so you could understand what I'm saying here, they tried to pin me as a center guy in a Russia conspiracy, even though I've never traveled to Russia. I've never met a government official from Russia. So what was going on in my situation is I had a lot of Western government people, U.S. allied people meeting with me, countries like Italy, countries like Israel, the United Kingdom, Australia.
Yes.
Where did I meet Mifsud, Joe? I didn't meet him in Tehran, Iran. I didn't meet him in Moscow. I met him in Rome, Italy. He was introduced to me by a company in London that Simona had worked for as well, that the director, we later found out, had a working relationship with Bob Mueller after 9/11.
Wow.
That person set this all in motion. Do you know when they set it in motion? In the spring of 2016. So at the beginning of this conversation, when I said that everything was pre-planned, it was a setup, there was no spontaneous investigation, that's what I'm talking about. And for all the details, I covered extensively in the book. It's a little complicated, but that's what they did to me, like they tried to do to Don Jr. But in Don Jr.'s case, at least they threw a Russian in his lap or in his face to try to create some real fake conspiracy. In my story, they were bringing, Australians or Maltese guys or Italians or Israelis, and then still saying I was meeting with Russians. So you could understand, to what extent they really went to try to paint me as part of a conspiracy, to the extent that they might have actually affected their own relationships with some of these foreign governments.
At George Papa 19 over on X, he's got a huge following there, and also go and get his book. It's called Deep State Target. George Papadopoulos is my guest. Let me go off of I want to get back to the chronology of it in a second, but let me just go off into opinion land for a second. In 16 and 15, when I started talking to Trump and having him on my show, when I started talking to Rudy Giuliani and had him on my show, and the other advocates for President Trump, the mainstream didn't think he had a chance. That's what they were saying. We don't think he has a chance. This is a joke. He's never going to be president. Obama was saying he's never going to be president. Hillary was laughing it up. The late night talk shows all said he had no chance. George, what really jumps out at me and what startles me, and I wonder if you agree with this, is how the deep state really knew he had a shot. If they didn't think he had a shot, they wouldn't have done this to you. They wouldn't have done it to Stone and to Flynn and everybody else. They really feared him while the mainstream pretended he was a clown. Why do you think that is? Why did they know that he was going to be a real challenge to the deep state and to the establishment?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and I completely agree with you that they really knew that he had a chance. And just so you've been on the Trump train since 2015.
Yes.
The week after Trump went down those escalators, I reached out to his campaign wanting to leave my cushy job in DC to work for that campaign for two reasons, Joe. One, I knew he was going to be president, and I have this in writing. I sent it to Corey Lewandowski at a time when no one on earth knew who Corey Lewandowski was, and he also had the right policies and ideas for America. They were populist, they were nationalistic, they were about securing the border, making the government more efficient, making the economy more robust. But more importantly than all that, it was about nationalism versus globalism. So the deep state and why that some of these foreign governments that I've been talking about here today got involved is because Hillary Clinton was going to be Obama's third term. A lot of these countries already had vested interests in Obama's administration, in how the whole world is really shifting towards this very socialist, globalist momentum. And you have a guy, candidate Trump, who's there talking about nationalism, about sovereignty, about renegotiating trade deals, getting the United States out of all these supranational organizations like the climate change agenda, trying to prevent war with Russia. So this was a direct threat to all of the momentum of the uniparty of the last probably since the turn of the century. And President Trump, as a nationalistic candidate with these populist ideas about returning America to greatness, they couldn't allow it. So that's why they went so wild in their attempt to break every rule imaginable. You have some guys from the FBI who had worked at Crossfire Hurricane were currently sitting in prison because of what they did. This guy, Charles McGonigal. You have Kevin Kleinsmith, who was the FBI attorney who pled out to a felony. You have the FBI at a record low approval rating, at least before Kash Patel took over.
Right.
So all of this was designed for one reason and one reason only, to stop America from going down this nationalistic, pro-sovereignty route that President Trump has fortunately taken us on, and we see the direct result.
What an intelligent answer, because watching it from somebody who's been in the media, I've been in the media 36 years now. At that point, it was 25 or 26 years. Being in for so long, I was listening to what those on the other side of the media were saying, and they were really convincing that they didn't believe that he could win. But it was a nonstop droning on. And the mechanisms under the surface by the deep state and the swamp were unknown to me. And again, I do this for a living. You saw it coming. You realized, and this is what's interesting to me, because Donald Trump was a developer, very well-known billionaire. He'd show up and do a cameo in a movie. He was the star of The Apprentice, a reality TV show where it was all about his money and all about that. I mean, he was sort of a caricature of what people want out of a capitalistic society, and nobody in the actual, those who are the elite wannabe voting experts, nobody thought that he was going to do anything. But again, you're saying, I just want to circle back to this because it blows my mind. The deep state knew from the beginning that this guy was a real threat and that Hillary had no chance unless they really went after him.
I completely believe it, and also call it maybe it's a sixth sense of mine. I'm from Chicago. It's a blue collar big city. Okay, I have a lot of blue collar folks in my family. I have others who are white collar people in my family. So I had this really interesting background where I saw both sides of American society: the capitalists and the blue collar workers who were just trying to get by. And it was the blue collar people in my family and people I was growing up with that were really resonating with Trump's message about jobs, about traditions, about sovereignty. And that's really what the overwhelming majority of America is. It's not the guys I later worked with in Washington, D.C., a lot of these old Reagan and George H.W. and George W. Bush people who really don't understand mainstream America. President Trump, candidate Trump, developer Trump, showman Trump understood and put his finger on the pulse of America because he is a developer. He worked with those blue collar people. He knew how to deal with banks. He knew how to deal with Wall Street. And that's a very unique perspective for somebody to have. Usually billionaires have one perspective, right? It's either they don't know Wall Street, or they'll know how to develop, but they don't know how to deal with the average man or woman. They don't know how to deal with the plumbers, the guys putting up the drywall.
Right.
President Trump knew all this. And I think based on all the horrendous things that Clinton was up to that we now have learned, based on all this recently declassified information about pay to play, what the Clinton Foundation was really up to, the FBI and the intelligence community knew that Hillary was a liability, that she was a very dirty politician who was a likely national security threat. And this isn't just my opinion. This is what's been coming out recently. And
Right.
you even have the Clinton Foundation now going on trial. So with all of this going on, they knew that Trump had the best chance, but they had to stop him to control him because he wasn't controllable based on his background. That's why they tried to spy on him. That's why they tried to dirty him up with this Russia nonsense, but it all failed. While Clinton, they knew that if she had won, that she would have made the United States in a much less safe position. And that's really why I think Comey launched that investigation at the very end.
Right.
I don't think he had a choice. And I think, moving forward, I think we're going to find out a lot more about why the U.S. intelligence community and others thought that Hillary was the threat that she was from a national security point of view.
Oh, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. But at the same time, if I'm hearing you right, she was very controllable by Obama. I've got all this dirt on you. We're going to help you win, but it's really my third term. If I hear you right, she was never really good. She was going to be a figurehead. Hey, we got the first woman elected. Hey, she's a Clinton. Hey, she was a Secretary of State. She knows about global stuff. But Obama was going to still pull the strings. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's completely what it was. And when I mentioned that these other interest groups, these foreign governments, all of these globalist agendas that were everywhere in 2015, 2014, they all had a vested interest in her winning, but she was controllable because of how dirty she was and how up to her neck in corruption she was involved with. So when you have a controllable person, you make them do what you want. While candidate Trump, President Trump, is not a dirty businessman. He's not a dirty politician.
Right.
And he's uncontrollable. He's there for the right reasons. So they had to invent dirt to try to attempt to control him. And that's really why this is such a massive scandal, because in reality, President Trump is a victim of a crime here.
Wow. Oh, he really is. And hopefully the criminal's going to pay. It is George Papadopoulos, international policy expert, author. Go get Deep State Target, also the co-host of Global View Show. Go and check that out on YouTube. Back to your story specifically. So the knock on your door comes after he won, but before he took office, or was he in office?
It was the week after the inauguration. So technically, he was in office already. So,
George, let me stop you. What were they trying to do then? If he's in office, he's already won. Because I know that they dropped the dossier, the fake dossier on him on like the 17th of January, right before he got inaugurated. And then they started the control of him and stopping him from doing what he wanted to do for a couple of years in earnest. But he's already in office. He's already won. So they get you to say Trump colluded with Russia. What does that get them? Impeachment that they might actually find him guilty? What were they trying to do? The guy already won.
You know, it just brought back a very interesting memory. So when they knocked on my door, so now we know everything about the Steele dossier, right?
Right.
We know not only has it been debunked, but it was actually criminal. And the elements that went into it were part of an ongoing criminal conspiracy case that Cash Patel and others are now investigating.
Right.
So when they came to my house, they actually started to ask me questions about the so-called Steele dossier. There was a Wall Street Journal headline story about the Steele dossier, and that's what they attempted to try to talk to me about, even though I had no idea what that whole thing was. So just so you understand what I'm saying here, they knew the thing was fake. They knew it was bought and paid for political opposition, and that it was being lied about by the own U.S. intelligence community. But they used that to come to interview me to try to catch me in a perjury trap. And they used that to get fraudulent FISA warrants to spy on not only the campaign, but of course, President Trump's administration. So this is really at the heart of what they were attempting to do. And they saw that he was winning. And what did they have to do there? They said, we can't allow this guy to govern. So they had to go quickly and ambush General Flynn while he was actually in the White House. So they had to go and attempt to get Rosenstein to hurry up and hire Mueller, to get Mueller appointed.
Right.
It was designed specifically to overthrow Trump with an impeachment and convict him using the media as their puppets to get the message across to members of Congress and the U.S. Citizenry. So that's really how they were all working hand in glove. But they were attempting to overthrow him the moment he stepped into office. That's something that I really want people to understand.
It's amazing. It's George Papadopoulos. Incredible information. George, let me ask you something. I consider myself reasonably smart, although Simona says you're way smarter than I am. I don't get how you can be charged with lying about something that isn't true. You following what I'm saying here? The Steele dossier was fake, paid for by the DNC and Hillary Clinton. All these allegations of collusion with Russia were lies and fake and made up by Obama in that meeting on December 9th. We know that there was no collusion, that Trump certainly didn't work with them, and they didn't affect the election in 16 at all. So it doesn't matter what they ask you about that. Whatever answer you give is valid because it's based on a false premise. Am I missing the point here?
You're not missing it at all, and that's why they say you can indict a ham sandwich. And that's why the feds have a 97% victory rate, especially in places like Washington D.C. So they knew it was fake, it was illegal. They illegally surveilled a candidate, his team, a presidency. They broke every single rule in order to do it, and yet they were still able to get fraudulent indictments by basically lying to courts and lying to juries and lying to grand juries and lying to judges. So, I mean, it really shows you how, bizarre our entire justice system really is, where that could actually happen in America, where the feds could actually get people convicted on complete lies and fraudulent evidence. And if it could happen to a president, a presidential campaign, imagine what they could do to an everyday Joe, an everyday American citizen out there.
Right.
So, I mean, this is really a big part of the, draining the swamp that MAGA is really all about, what President Trump is really all about. Because if we don't restore credibility to our institutions, to the Department of Justice, to the rule of law in America, then we're really no different than a banana republic. And it doesn't really matter if the economy grows a little faster or the border's secure, because we're going to end up imploding from within. And that's something that people like Kash Patel, Ratcliffe at the CIA, Gabbard, and A.G. Bondi, I think are all working to correct. And I think it's really the most important, or equally as important, part of the Trump agenda, as well as growing the economy and securing the border.
I want to make sure those watching and listening understand, had you simply said, yes, Trump knew about this, you would not have been arrested. You would not have been charged. You would not have gone to prison. You would not have had to go through a pardon. They wanted you to lie, and they thought they would. I'm guessing, and you can elaborate on this if you don't mind. But I'm guessing they thought you were going to be weak-kneed and say, "I'll say whatever you want, just don't throw me in prison." And you were strong enough to push back on that. But is it true, George? Had you just said what they wanted you to say, you'd have been free and clear.
Absolutely, and just to be clear, I want to tell your a very large audience as well. The mainstream media at that time was trying to create Simona and I as the new John Dean. And this is something that I don't think I've really talked about. So it wasn't just the Fed and the FBI and Mueller's team and all those lunatics, dropping the hammer on me. I was then being offered gold and silver, if you will, by the mainstream media, saying we're going to create a new John Dean. You're going to become a multimillionaire. You have a beautiful wife. You're a young guy. This is going to become like the new All the President's Men. You're going to help overthrow this corrupt guy. And I told Simona, and Simona told me, don't ever feed into this. This is all wrong. Where the truth is going to come out.
Yeah.
Stick to the truth. We will be exonerated. We will be vindicated. And that's exactly what happened. So it wasn't like that was the kind of pressure that we were all under. And then, of course, losing all my life savings, losing my old business associates,
right?
Having my former allies distance themselves from me. So basically, I had Simona, she had me, and we were against the world, and we just stuck to the truth, and we had our faith in Jesus to keep us going and in one another. And it all worked out in the end, Joe. But to be honest, I mean, what I just explained was a very rough time. I mean, I don't know how many people could actually withstand that type of pressure from so many angles, but somehow we did it, and I wouldn't change a thing.
Interesting reference, John Dean. John Dean, of course, was the key witness in the Watergate scandal. And they basically offered him the world, I guess, to do this. A more modern reference, and I wonder if you agree with this, maybe out of The Matrix, where you had the one guy played by Joe Palingantano. I forget his entire name. But he sits there with the actual agents and says, I know this isn't really steak, but I'm going to eat it and I'm going to enjoy it. You've got to give me all the women I want, all the riches I want, and I'll tell you where Neo is hiding. Basically the same thing. They offered you and Simona, you will be like the king and queen of the world, just do what we want. And you said, I'm not doing that.
That's exactly, I mean, that's a perfect example. And I basically was like Morpheus in that situation.
No, it's a good reference.
I was a true believer in the truth, in the cause, and I knew I would be vindicated eventually. I knew that President Trump would be vindicated eventually. Simona knew it. That's why she would give interviews on Hannity, Tucker Carlson, George Stephanopoulos, saying that the truth is going to come out. There's a lot more to the story that you could possibly imagine. It was at a time when I couldn't talk. So she was basically my voice for me. But when you believe in something, Joe, nothing can break you. That's why faith is so important, and why belief in God and your family and yourself, and never turning against your fellow man or committing perjury against somebody who's innocent.
Right.
These are things that people really, if they hold those values, they could overcome anything. And if they fall for the short-term gain, like people like, I'll give another example, like you mentioned the guy in Matrix, like Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen was that guy. Michael Cohen ate the steak. The agents basically told him, you're going to tell us now what to do. But what ended up happening? He ended up getting a little podcast, made a little money. But in the end, he's a disgraced person. He never recovered. He's not been pardoned. And he's going to go down in history as just a crook. So that's really how you have to look at life. Do you want to be remembered for the right things or the wrong things? In my case, Joe, I'm proud of who I am today, and I know my wife is proud of me, and hopefully America is for how I stood up for what was right.
I'm certainly proud of you. Listen, I'm Italian. I've got to say it right. Joe Pantoliano. That's the guy's name. They called him Joey Pants, I think, for short. He was Guido the Killer Pimp, I think, in Risky Business back in the day. But you're right. I mean, he sat there, he ate the steak, and he thought he was going to get the entire world handed to him on a platter, even though it was fake. None of it was real. And of course, at the end, that didn't work out very well for him. It is George Papadopoulos. And George, I appreciate you coming on. Deep State Target is the name of the book. Let's get into the first 2 years of the Trump presidency. As you said, they try to lock him down, stop him from governing. When I talked to my friend Mike Davis, who I think you know from the Article 3 Project, Mike says this probably wasn't, that meeting that Obama put together in December of 16, probably wasn't treason, although it seemed treasonous. It probably was a restriction of rights, not allowing the man to govern after he was duly elected by the people. So, long question again, shorter. Who's going to pay? I think Obama's going to claim presidential immunity. I don't know if he gets away with that, but I think he will. Is everybody else in that room going to pay? Brennan, Comey, Clapper, Rice, Lynch, Biden? Who's going to pay? Because you know this as well as I do. And you and Simona are in the same circles that I'm in when it comes to conservatism and loving this country. People want people in handcuffs, George. People don't want them to get away with doing what they did to you and to your wife and to Trump and his entire family and to people like me censoring us off of social media. Is somebody going to be put in shackles and actually face real charges, do you think?
I do. So let me try to simplify this. It's a really complicated situation, but I think the only way that Patel, Gabbard, and Bondi and Ratcliffe are actually going to create a real conspiracy case against people like Brennan and Comey, they actually have to go to the source of how this whole thing started. How did Russiagate, Obamagate even start, Joe? Let's go down memory lane. According to
it was Jake Sullivan, right, in the Hillary Clinton campaign. I'll let you say it, but when you asked me that question, I thought Jake Sullivan immediately. Go ahead.
Jake Sullivan was the foreign policy advisor connected to all these foreign governments, right? You had the so-called Australian diplomat who was a personal friend of Hillary and Bill Clinton, who, when he was a foreign minister of Australia, he gave $25 million to the Clinton Foundation.
Right.
You had Christopher Steele, who was an MI6 operative. Do you know what these two people have in common?
No.
They both worked for foreign intelligence services. These two people, along with Mifsud, who was part of Italy, all worked hand in glove to create the conspiracy. So the only way to understand the origins of how this entire train wreck started is you have to talk to these foreign governments. And that's really what I think Donald Trump's administration has been doing, especially with John Durham. They've been talking to the Italian government, the Ukrainian government, other governments who knew what Clinton and the Obama administration were up to and how they basically forced them to set this whole thing in motion. So once you get that info, then you go into the fraudulent FISA warrants once the investigation got passed off domestically, because it started internationally, then it went to domestic FBI investigation that was based on the evidence that they got abroad from people like Steele, from like this Australian guy, from Mifsud, from others. So what they're going to end up doing here is, I think, they're going to find evidence that the Obama administration, likely Clapper and Brennan, worked with some of these people abroad to manufacture a fake investigation with a fake predicate, to then launch it and pass it off to people like Strzok and Page and Comey. That's why they put Brennan and Comey under criminal investigation simultaneously as part of this conspiracy. So the people that I ultimately think are going to get indicted, it's probably going to be Jim Comey and Brennan, and I think Clapper at this point is the one cooperating. I don't know if it's going to reach Obama because of the presidential immunity ruling out of the Supreme Court, but at the end of this investigation, I think his entire legacy is going to be in the toilet.
But, you know, it's like you're reading my mind, George. I was gonna say, who's talking? Somebody's talking, because they're very confident in the DOJ right now. They're very confident in the DNI's office. You think it's Clapper?
Yeah, I think it's Clapper. You just have to look at Clapper. He's actually been given a lot of interviews on CNN. He's been talking about the case.
Right.
He just basically said, I've lawyered up, while Comey is talking about Taylor Swift.
Right.
Acting
That's
very
a good
bizarre.
Point. Right.
He looks like he's in a state of paranoia. And look, I know, as somebody with experience in this, how they build these cases. Comey right now, based on his bizarre behavior, that he's not doing interviews, right? He's not going public. That's usually when a lawyer advises you don't talk.
Okay.
But he's giving these weird signals. And I think he's paranoid, and he's thinking, who's testifying against me? Who's been impaneled by a grand jury? Who's been offered immunity? And how far back does this investigation really go? And what further information is going to be declassified? So I think Clapper is the one potentially cooperating now. I think Comey is definitely in the crosshairs. And Brennan, based on what I explained at the beginning of this, how this whole thing started with these international agents, he's definitely going to be in the crosshairs of people like Patel and Gabbard and Bondi.
Well, interestingly, and probably very ironically, President Trump had that immunity ruling. Anything that is an official act, you've got presidential immunity. Obama can simply say, well, that meeting I had on the 9th was a presidential act. I called a meeting. I'm allowed to call a meeting as the president. So maybe he gets away with it. And this might be a better question for Rudy Giuliani, our mutual friend. But is Obama the mob boss? Is he the kingpin in a RICO case? Obama had to start the ball rolling. Everything that you just said is true, verifiably true, but it wasn't organic. Australia didn't say, let me do this. The intel agencies in England and Italy didn't say, let's do this. There had to be somebody who started the ball rolling. Is that Obama?
A great question, Joe. There's only one man or woman on planet Earth that could mobilize this type of momentum to basically put the finger on our democratic process and on the truth. And that is the President of the United States of America.
Yes.
These foreign governments, Christopher Steele, Mifsud, the Australian guy, all of these other informants are not going to go out of their way to start targeting Michael Flynn, targeting Papadopoulos, Carter Page, trying to dirty up candidate Trump, unless they're being instructed by the upper echelons of the U.S. government. So if it wasn't President Obama, it was Brennan. I believe it was President Obama. He then passed it off to Brennan to start this whole thing abroad. so that he could pass it off later on in disguise to the FBI domestically. And they thought that's how they were going to get away with it, Joe. They thought by using these foreign guys in countries like Italy, England, Australia, just gaining information on Trump and Trump's advisors, that they can then later pass it off to the FBI and say, of course it was justified. We now know that there's evidence that it was never justified,
Right.
and that the whole thing was concocted and predetermined. Now, the only answer is, was it President Obama, or was it Brennan, or was it Comey? We're going to have that answer soon, but I think it was Obama.
Well, it almost has to be, because he called the meeting, and all of a sudden the Washington Post is getting leaked all sorts of fallacious stuff. It's George Papadopoulos. Go and follow him at GeorgePapa19 on X. Go get his book called Deep State Target. He's also the co-host, along with his wife Simona, Global View Show on YouTube. Go check that out as well. I want to talk about the personal aspect of it. You and Simona have been friends of mine for a long time, and just a wonderful couple. Like globally, people are like, damn, what a great couple. But it almost didn't happen, I would assume. Were they trying to split you two up by calling her a Russian spy and calling you some liar under oath under federal charges? Was there an attempt to personally affect you the same way they were affecting you professionally?
Yeah, I mean, talk about trying to derail a blooming romance. You know,
Right.
we had just been dating. We had just been dating for 5 or 6 months before I was violently arrested at Dulles Airport by 10 FBI agents and put in shackles. So usually, most people would probably leave, or
I'm out of here, man. You have a good one, George. I'm gone. Yeah.
Oh, you're not the guy I thought you were, kind of thing, But like you.
But was that part of the game? I'm gonna attack you personally until you do what I want. I mean, literally, they hit you from all angles, didn't they, George?
Yeah, look, they even tried to get her to wear a wire against me. They had guys I went to school with wear wires against me. They had professors. They had, I mean, you name it, they threw it at me. And fortunately, Simona did not turn against me, because she knew that I was innocent. She's a lawyer by trade, so she always says that if I knew you were innocent, so that's why I always defended you, as well as loving you. But there's obviously a fine line between if you're a criminal versus somebody who's been set up, right? So they tried everything, and it just failed, because when you're united and you believe in yourself and you believe in the truth, like I mentioned earlier, nothing can stop you. You could take a couple of punches, but in the end, you'll recover. And it's not, and what do they say? Life isn't what happens to you, it's how you react to it. And I think we reacted to it in the best way that we possibly could. And we've been married now, going on 8 years. And
love it.
We have people like you as good friends, and we're very blessed.
Oh, well, I'm blessed to be a friend of both of you. That's for sure. It's George Papadopoulos. I want to finish up, George, on a couple of things. And her backbone's as strong as yours. The fact that she didn't run was a real commentary to your relationship and the strength there and the belief that you had in each other, the trust that you had in each other. And God bless you both. I hope that it's a 60-year marriage. Having said all of that, let's finish with two specific things that I think that you'll be able to give me great commentary on. Number one, how exactly do you find out about a pardon? When the president pardons you, because I don't think that you were lobbying to be pardoned, but before he left office the first time, he gave you that, as well he should have, because what they charged you with was bogus, as we talked about. Do you get a phone call? Does he call you? How does that work?
Yeah, so I wasn't lobbying for it. I mean, I had given some national interviews where they had asked me, would you be interested? I said, look, if the president wants to pardon me, it's completely up to him. It would be an honor and a privilege. And of course, I would honorably accept it. But I wasn't going out of my way lobbying anybody or, getting lawyers to try to do it for me. And I think the president, he's an honorable man. He's an incredibly generous man. And he knew what happened to me and others was wrong. He corrected those historic injustices. And I was just in my house in Los Angeles with Simona in December of 2020, I believe, and I get a text message from the White House. We're going to have some news coming out about you, and then I find out publicly that I'm pardoned. So then I get texted the pardon with the signature, and
wow.
Then of course I congratulated. I thanked President Trump on numerous interviews I gave thereafter, and it's just a very beautiful moment. It's something I'll never forget.
It's so funny, though. You found out when I found out. You actually saw it in the news.
Besides the text message I got.
Well, did you get the text after? Did you get the text after you saw the news, or were they at the same time? Because they said there was going to be some news about you, and then you saw the news.
Exactly.
I just wonder what came first, the text or the news? You know?
Oh yeah, so the text was you're going to get some news, and then the pardon was the news, right? So I guess that's the chronology. I didn't expect it, but like I said, when President Trump started to understand the facts, and I'm pretty sure he understands a lot more now,
yes,
than he did in the last time, because he had a lot of these guys, Joe, like the Boltons. Some would argue people like Tillerson, maybe Pompeo,
right?
They were trying to thwart him from within. They weren't there to help him. I mean, Pompeo was a director of the CIA. He had this information. Why didn't he give it to Trump the first time?
Well,
Trump now has the information, but he still pardoned me the first time. So I'm just very excited to see what's going to come out now.
Last question. I want to delve into your expertise internationally on this. They impeached him the first time over a phone call. The phone call had nothing wrong with it whatsoever. He calls it the perfect phone call. It turns out Rudy Giuliani went over to Ukraine, interviewed the guy that was fired because Biden said you better fire the prosecutor. And then the stench of corruption started rising to the top. So President Trump congratulates Zelensky on his win and says, hey, can you do me a favor and see if there's any dirt that I should know about from the former administration? I don't want anything to pop up and bite us in the rear end. Was there corruption? Was there something going on with the oligarchs in the Biden family? I just want to know if that's going on, which he has every right to ask that question, George. That is not impeachable. It's stupid. Certainly not a high crime or treason. Did they impeach him because he was getting close, do you think?
Absolutely. And this was a perfect phone call with a transcript. The entire phone call.
And people listening.
It's not like this was. People were listening. You have a transcribed interview. This wasn't some sort of whispering in the ear of Zelensky, and then Zelensky passed off some rumor or some innuendo that Trump said. The interview is transcribed for the world to see, and we just have to look at what a commonality between the Trump haters and the Democrats really has been over the last 9 years, Joe. They've mastered the art of projection.
Yes.
What they accuse President Trump of doing, they themselves are guilty of it. If it involves alleged bribes or scandals in Ukraine or quid pro quo or attempting to coerce Ukrainian politicians, that all comes from Joe Biden and his family that enriched themselves to the tune of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton with the Clinton Foundation. You know what President Trump's interest in Ukraine is? Stopping the killing, stopping the war. That's what his interest and America's interest is, and that's what he's been focusing on since day one.
Yeah, you think that guy Vindman should be in trouble because of how he lied about what Trump said? I speak Ukrainian. I know what he said. Again, he just lied about it, and Trump was, as you said, expert by releasing the actual transcript of the phone call. There was nothing wrong with it. Should he face some charges? He knew what he was saying wasn't true.
I mean, Vindman was just another example of the type of people that were there to undermine him from within. I mean, not only do you have these external crazy Democrat prosecutors from Mueller and Comey and Rosenstein and all these people, you had his own staff, not all of them, of course, but people like Vindman trying to overthrow him from within, lying about the phone call, leaking tidbits of it to people in the media and the Democrats in Congress. And what did it end up doing? It riled them up. The president was, of course, acquitted of whatever this bogus impeachment charge was. And in the end, all of the people that faced him have either been disgraced under criminal investigation themselves or likely will be facing it very soon, Joe.
George Papadopoulos, I appreciate the lengthy time today, my friend. Thanks for coming on the podcast. It is at George Papa 19 over on X. Get his book called Deep State Target. Go follow and subscribe right now to Global View Show here on YouTube. George, thanks a million. Incredible insight. I mean, stuff I hadn't heard before, and I appreciate you letting us know right here for this audience. Thanks, man.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. We're going to have another Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags to come. Make sure you subscribe to this playlist. We'll talk to you soon.